In today's Black Clover theory, we prove why Julius and Lucius are not the same person based on how their grimoire works. This video also supports our theory that Julius is the time devil Astaroth in human form without knowing it himself. We found so many new clues that you probably haven't heard anywhere. Also, only a small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video. Let's go! In the following very short introduction for this video, we ignore any explanation of whether Lucius and Julius are one and the same person with different memories or whether Lucius and Julius are two different people, regardless of who Julius really is. That's the question we are trying to answer today, so let's first look at how the grimoire works, because that's one of the main arguments of this discussion. There's something very strange about the whole revelation of Julius Novachrono and Lucius Zogratis, in terms of how Lucius apparently uses the magic of the time devil Astaroth. It is only natural to assume that Lucius himself does not have time magic, but rather magic that is connected to the human body, just like his Dark siblings, bone, blood and body, which will then fit with his ability to use transformation magic, because time magic does not have the essence of transforming unless it is a unique ability for Astaroth, just as Lucifer has the unique ability to interfere with devils even if that ability has nothing to do with gravity. But the problem here is that while Dante uses Lucifer's magic, he did not have the unique ability to interfere with other devils, which only Lucifer could do even when he possessed Dante. So it looks like Lucius is the one who has the essence for using transformation magic, unless his contract or whatever gives him the ability to use Astaroth's time magic is fundamentally different from the way Dante used Lucifer's magic. So rather a complete control of Astaroth instead of a pact with him. But here's the thing, if Lucius doesn't have time magic, how was Julius able to use time magic spells using their grimoire, which turned out to be Lucius' Spade Kingdom grimoire? And since Lucius himself is assumed to have no time magic, his grimoire shouldn't be able to contain time magic spells, so Julius couldn't use any time magic spells. But he still did somehow. Something about the way they both use the grimoire seems very strange, and I think that's a big clue that we need to understand in order to predict future events. And here once again the never-ending question comes into play. Are Lucius and Julius one and the same person, or are they two different people? One main argument why so many believe that Julius and Lucius are one and the same person is because many compare Julius and Lucius to Patri and William, who both have two souls and one body, and thus two different grimoires. This is because one soul belongs to one grimoire, so two souls, two grimoires. Patri cannot use William's grimoire and William cannot use Patri's grimoire, but Lucius and Julius seem to have only one grimoire, which speaks for only one soul, and both use the same grimoire, so theoretically they should have the same soul. This is definitely a fair argument, but what if one of them just doesn't have a grimoire, or can't have a grimoire on his own because he might be a devil? Here we should not forget two very important points. First, Lucius' grimoire is special, I will explain how in a moment. Also, time magic probably belongs to Astaroth, not Lucius, and thus is devil magic, and thus doesn't normally belong to a grimoire anyway, simply because devils normally cannot possess or use a grimoire unless it's a 5-leaf clover. This combination only existed with one team so far, Asta and Liebe. If you compare what I just said about Lucius's grimoire and devil time magic, you will see that the same can be applied to Asta and Liebe and the devil anti-magic. Asta also has a unique grimoire and also uses devil magic by using his unique grimoire. However, originally his grimoire has nothing to do with anti-magic. So it is not necessary that grimoires can only be used with their original magic as long as the following two criteria are met. First, the grimoire must be pitch black. For the Clover Kingdom it means having 5 leaves, and thus it can be used by devils. And this is also the second requirement. When a devil uses or takes a pitch black grimoire, the grimoire's magic transforms accordingly to the devil's magic. Thus a grimoire can be used for a different magic than originally intended. So the only way you can use a grimoire that you own with a different magic than the original magic is if you somehow obtained a pitch black grimoire and brings that grimoire into contact with a devil, so that the magic of the pitch black grimoire adapts to the devil's magic. But then you also need the ability to control this devil magic yourself without the devil having control of the grimoire. So you possess the pitch black grimoire, but the essence for its magic comes from a devil. We also have a perfect example of this, Asta and Liebe. Just look at the devil binding ritual. Liebe took Asta's grimoire out of his pocket. Then he opened the grimoire, pulled out the swords, filled them with anti-magic and controlled them all by himself. Asta couldn't even do anything about it, but the grimoire still remained with Asta, symbolizing that he was the true owner. But the moment Asta entered the ritual, everything that gave him the possibility to use the grimoire disappeared, even his anti-magic arm. It is perhaps like Patri's 5-leaf Clover grimoire that turned into a word magic grimoire after Zogratis took possession of it. And in the case of Asta's grimoire, the grimoire turned into an anti-magic grimoire because Liebe had been in the grimoire for 17 years. Thus it received the essence of Liebe's anti-magic. But for some reason the anti-magic grimoire chose Asta even though it was already in contact with the devil. The reason for this could possibly be related to the way Liebe and Asta are connected to each other. It could be that Lycita has made certain preparations so that Asta and Liebe are connected to each other, or maybe Asta's father. If we compare this back to Julius and Lucius, it could be a similar case if we assume that both are not one and the same person. While Julius could be, for example, Astaroth, controlled by Lucius with his own magic, maybe brain magic, maybe soul magic, something that is part of the human body and allows him to manipulate people and use transformation magic, with which he could change Astaroth's appearance into that of a human and make him believe he is a human with the name Julius Novachrono. The only thing left to explain is how or why Astaroth, that is Julius in this case, should be able to use Lucius' grimoire when it really doesn't belong to him, because devils don't have grimoires and usually can't use normal grimoires. However, remember what we said about Lucius Grimoire. It seems to be something special. It's definitely not a normal grimoire from the Spade Kingdom. If you compare it to the Clover Kingdom, we only have 2 types of special grimoires, 4 and 5 leaves. Grimoires are all the same, the only difference is that they are represented differently in the 4 kingdoms. That is, just because a Diamond Kingdom, for example, has no leaves, doesn't mean it can't have its own version of the 4-leaf clover. Maybe it would be a 5-sided diamond or something else. Just because it's rare doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe it just doesn't exist in this generation. Maybe there was a special diamond grimoire 300 years ago. Zogratis didn't call the 5-leaf clover grimoire a pitch black grimoire for nothing. A pitch black grimoire seems to be the kind of grimoire that devil can possess, for example the 5-leaf clover in the Clover Kingdom. Therefore, if we assume that Lucius' grimoire is special, then it can only be a version of the 4-leaf clover or the 5-leaf clover in the Spade Kingdom. If we assume that Lucius has a pitch black grimoire from the Spade Kingdom, then a devil could theoretically be able to use the grimoire even with spells of their own magic, as we have seen with Zogratis and Patri's grimoire. And this is exactly the point of this logical conclusion. A devil cannot use spells with a grimoire that is not pitch black. But since Julius himself has used devil time magic with a grimoire that belongs to Lucius and is connected to the Spade Kingdom, and is also clearly special as it is different from the other Spade Kingdom grimoires we have seen so far, we can assume that it is indeed pitch black, and therefore, Julius could be Astaroth himself, using Lucius' grimoire because he is a devil who turned Lucius' pitch black grimoire into a time magic grimoire, because this grimoire is in contact with the time devil, Julius. Just like Asta and Liebe and the anti-magic grimoire. All Lucius had to do then was to use his own magic to control Astaroth and thus the grimoire. So in this case, Lucius would be using his own magic to control Astaroth, to turn his pitch black grimoire into a pitch black time magic grimoire, which he could then use to indirectly gain control of time magic. So let's talk about how this could be possible. Obviously it could have something to do with 2 souls sharing one body, as we have already seen with William and Patri. Tabata may have given us a great foreshadowing in the last chapter, suggesting that in the case of Julius and Lucius, 2 souls share one body. The reason this is so good is because after Patri and William, no one expects this plot twist to happen again, and Lucius and Julius do not appear like 2 different people either. With William we never had an inner monologue, but with Julius we do. So let's take a closer look at the last chapter. After Damnatio confronted Julius with his accusations, he said that Astaroth has completely escaped the underworld. He continues and says, "Please tell me that I am mistaken. The devil who is now in this kingdom, tell me that it is not you." And Julius answered, "I see. Then it's really me." At that moment something happens to Julius and he turns into Lucius. When this happens, Julius tried to say, "Damnatio, quick, don't let me." And then it was already too late. We didn't get to know what Julius wanted to say, but based on Damnatio's magic we can assume he wanted Damnatio to take away his magic so Lucius couldn't take control. But Lucius managed to take control in time and Julius was gone. So here Damnatio directly accused Julius of being Astaroth, which would fit with the fact that Astaroth is no longer in the underworld. Of course, Damnatio was probably just making assumptions, so this may not necessarily be true. And Julius' response could be due to not knowing the truth, as he could be Lucius with altered memories, and because of Damnatio, he started to believe that he could actually be Astaroth. But the fact that Lucius was able to take over Julius' body immediately after he was exposed suggests that Lucius could have done this at any time, and so it is possible that he was silently controlling Julius' actions in the background, always ready to take control. Julius' inner monologues proved several times that Lucius was not pretending to be Julius. Julius was an independent person who may have been influenced in his decisions by Lucius in the background, but Julius was still unaware of everything that was happening in the background, especially of the existence of Lucius and his connection to Astaroth. So if we combine these 2 points, that Lucius could actively observe the situation, which means that he was aware of his own existence all the time, and that Julius is an independent person at the same time and knew nothing about Lucius' existence, then it is simply impossible to claim that Julius and Lucius are the same person, because that is contradictory. Julius knew nothing about Lucius, but Lucius observed everything Julius did. So how can Julius be Lucius? Either they are 2 different people who somehow merged, which is rather unlikely, or they are at least 2 souls in one body, at least 2 because we can't prove if Astaroth didn't have a contract with a human named Julius before he met Lucius, who could then have manipulated Julius and Astaroth, or if Astaroth is Julius himself. The soul argument would suggest that Lucius has soul magic, which could explain the transformation magic and how he and Astaroth and perhaps Julius as a possible third entity ended up in one body. For example, we know that Raids has soul corpse magic that he can use to control dead people, so maybe someone with soul magic could control living people. But Raids can also use spells like Soul Abductor, which allows him to take the soul of a person who has just died and bring it back into their dead body to give it a second life. He can even put souls into other bodies, so there is such an ability that allows a user to change bodies, as reincarnations also clearly proved. Patry and William were 2 completely different souls sharing one body. When one soul took control, they had a different appearance, different magic, different mana, and even a different grimoire. Yami could not see that William and Patry were in the same body even with the help of Ki. He just had a strange feeling about Patry and William that he couldn't explain. Another big foreshadowing related to this strange feeling might have been the fight between Julius and Patry when it turned out that Patry and William had the same body. Although Julius could never prove that William was not who he seemed to be, he always suspected him, however, simply because he had this strange feeling, just as Yami did. Julius described it as a feeling of unease. And if we take a look at the chapter where Julius was revealed as Lucius, we see him sitting in his office thinking of himself about something he doesn't quite understand. He describes it as an unease, the same word he uses to describe the feeling he had when he first met Patry, but instead felt as if he had met William. So we can say that this unease came from the fact that he met a stranger, but he had the feeling that it was William without understanding why. There was no way to prove it, but he just knew. So now if we look again at this scene from the last chapter, the unease that Julius felt about himself might be based on a similar reason to the uneasiness he felt knowing that Patry was somehow connected to William. So in this case, Lucius must have somehow interfered with Julius' free will, which caused Julius unease because he may have felt that his actions were not really controlled by himself. I'm not talking about active actions such as his body moving on its own, but rather things happening to him without him being able to control them, or things happening to him that didn't fit with his decisions and actions. Things that should not have happened. But before my partner continues with this Black Clover video, please take a moment to leave a like. Thank you.
If we go back to this chapter, we can see that Julius asked Damnatio for help, and this is actually something that many seem to misunderstand about this moment. Many people believe that Damnatio balanced the power of the demon god with Julius's power, allowing Julius to temporarily become 10 years older. But that's not how Damnatio's spell works. He never used this magic in this way. All we have ever seen him do is regulate the magic of others by shrinking their magic power, but he has never shown the ability to transfer that magic power to anyone else. As we understand it, Damnatio was supposed to regulate the demon god's magic to give Julius a chance to defeat the demon god with the magic he had available at the moment, because otherwise Julius wouldn't be able to defeat the demon god. It had nothing to do with Damnatio giving Julius the ability to grow 10 years older. Moreover, Julius mentioned that this technique was based on the time he gathered. So the power of the demon god could not have given Julius a necessary essence for this kind of technique magic anyway. And Damnatio doesn't have the ability to steal time either. Julius only mentioned that with his magic in combination with Damnatio's magic, they can defeat the demon god. And that's exactly what they tried to do. Damnatio weakened the demon god and Julius tried to attack. It's a combination. But then suddenly, something happened that made Julius's magic disappear only after a few seconds, which Julius later described in his office as an uneasy feeling, just as he described his first encounter with Bathory, because he felt William in such a way that he couldn't understand. After Julius lost his magic, Damnatio's magic was still active, so it was not Damnatio who could not hold Julius's magic, because Damnatio had nothing to do with Julius's time magic at that moment. He was still focused on the demon god. Julius used time magic all of his life. He knows exactly how much time is needed to keep a certain spell for a certain time. So if he thinks something was wrong about that moment, we can confirm that it's true. Along with the uneasy feeling, we can assume that it was Lucius who did not allow Julius to use time magic at that moment, and thus interfered with Julius's actions, causing him this uneasy feeling as if someone else were indirectly in control, as if there is something or someone that has an indirect decision-making power over Julius. In this chapter, when Julius attacked the demon god, he even said something like, "Give me strength once more," as if he were asking someone else for power, and as if he understood that something is above him, even if he doesn't know who that person is. But why would Lucius have done that? Instead of giving Julius the power he needs, he has done the opposite, and possibly even taken away the magic Julius has collected. The reason could be that he was the one who brought the demon god to the Clover Kingdom, but not so that Julius could defeat him, but for Asta, whom Lucius wanted to test before letting him into the Spade Kingdom. If Nacht is working with Lucius, as we have often suspected, then that would be another explanation for why he didn't let Asta come directly with him to the Spade Kingdom, but left him in the Clover Kingdom for the time being. If it was really important to him that Asta was in top shape, then he would have trained Asta during the 6 months time skip and not just in the last few hours. It just doesn't add up. Keep in mind, however, we don't believe that Nacht to be evil, but his actions could be manipulated by Lucius. In this case, not like brainwashing, but rather by Lucius making him false promises. Nacht knew about the demon god in the Spade Kingdom, since he asked Meriliona to take care of it, and with that, it is very likely that he also knew about the existence of the demon god in the Clover Kingdom. If Nacht gathered all the information from the Dark Triad without knowing that they were related to Lucius, then he would know everything that the Dark Triad knows. That is, the existence of the two demon gods. So the fact that Xena knew about the demon god in the Clover Kingdom means that Nacht should have known too, which could then explain why he left Asta behind, because he knew that Asta would take care of it. If he had mentioned the demon god in the Clover Kingdom, he probably would not have been able to take all the other captains with him, who he believed were necessary to win the war in the Spade Kingdom. Of course, we know that Nacht has said that Asta should stay behind, because it is for his own safety, as he was not ready yet. But like I said, if this was so important, why did he train him at the last moment? It doesn't make any sense, unless he was just following Lucius's orders and Lucius needed Asta to be strong enough to barely defeat Lucifero, but not strong enough to defeat Lucius himself. So the conclusion would be that Lucius knew about the demon god and did not want Julius to interfere, since it was meant for Asta to defeat the demon god so that Lucius could see if Asta is now strong enough. For that, Lucius took away Julius's time magic, which gave Julius an uneasy feeling, as it felt like someone else was interfering with his magic. When Julius talked about this moment, he even mentioned that he felt the same unease even before this moment. This speaks to the fact that Lucius must have intervened in a similar way more often. This also makes sense because Lucius probably controlled any life decisions Julius made in a way that Julius himself could never have realized he was being manipulated. For example, the prophecies he suddenly knew. What do you think? Are Lucius and Julius one and the same person? Or are they two different souls? Let us know in the comments below. That's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yami out.